I never thought my life would take such a turn. Looking back, I wonder if I was too trusting, too blind to see the signs. My name is Ryan Carter, and for 10 years, I thought I had built a solid life with my wife, Jessica. We had a home, careers, and dreams of a future that now feel like a cruel joke. Jessica and I met in college. She was the kind of woman who turned heads, smart, ambitious, and with a charm that could disarm even the coldest heart. I fell hard and fast. We dated for 3 years before I proposed, and soon after, we got married in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Those early years were filled with love, laughter, and a shared vision of success. I worked my way up in finance, putting in long hours and making sacrifices to ensure we had the life we always talked about. Jessica, an interior designer, was passionate about her work, though she struggled to keep a steady stream of high-paying clients. She had big dreams of owning her own firm, and I was determined to support her every step of the way. I never questioned the long hours I spent at the office or the nights I came home late. I was building something for us. But looking back, I realized how blind I was. The first red flag came when Jessica started acting distant. It was subtle at first, less interest in conversations, spending more time on her phone, and vague explanations about late meetings with clients. I chalked it up to stress. After all, she had been complaining about struggling to get new projects. One night, I came home earlier than expected. The house was quiet, too quiet. I walked into the living room and saw Jessica hastily closing her laptop. She forced a smile and asked how my day was. It fell off. I tried to ignore it, convincing myself I was just overthinking things. Then, there were the sudden changes in her routine. She started dressing up more often, even when she claimed she was just running errands. She was glued to her phone, smiling at messages she never cared to share. When I asked about it, she brushed it off, saying I was being paranoid. The turning point came when a close friend of mine, Mark, pulled me aside one evening. "Ryan, I don't want to be the one to say this, but I think something's going on with Jessica," he said hesitantly. I felt my stomach drop. "What do you mean?" Mark hesitated. "I saw her last week at a restaurant. She wasn't alone. She was with some guy, and they looked close. It didn't seem like a business meeting." I wanted to dismiss it, to believe there was an explanation. But doubt had already taken root. That night, I confronted Jessica. I tried to stay calm, to give her the benefit of the doubt. "Mark said he saw you with someone," I said, watching her closely. Jessica's reaction was immediate, defensive, dismissive. "Oh, come on, Ryan. Do you really think I'd cheat on you? That's ridiculous." She laughed it off, but something in her eyes told a different story. I let it go, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. So, I did something I never thought I would. I started paying closer attention. I checked phone records, noticed unexplained credit card charges, and even found an unfamiliar cologne scent on her clothes. Still, I wanted undeniable proof before making accusations. One weekend, she said she had to attend a design conference out of town. It didn't sit right with me. Jessica wasn't the type to travel without making a big deal about it. So, I did something drastic. I decided to check her emails. What I found shattered me. There were messages, hundreds of them. Love notes, plans to meet up, inside jokes. And the worst part? The man she was seeing wasn't a stranger. It was Eric, someone I knew, someone I trusted. He was a real estate developer she had worked with on a few projects. I felt like the ground had been ripped from under me. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through their messages, each one cutting deeper than the last. She told him things she used to tell me, how he made her feel alive, how she missed him when they were apart. And then there was the worst message of all. "I can't wait until I can finally be with you without sneaking around." That was the moment I knew. She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning a future with him. I sat in our living room, staring at the screen, my mind racing. I felt sick. The woman I had built a life with, the woman I had sacrificed so much for, had already replaced me in her heart. I could have confronted her right then and there, but something in me held back. I needed to think to plan my next move. Anger surged through me, but so did a cold realization. I had worked too hard to let her walk away with everything. If she was willing to betray me, I had to be smart about how I handled this. I wasn't just going to expose her. I was going to make sure she didn't take half of everything I had built. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, emotions ranging from devastation to fury. But one thought stood out above the rest. I couldn't let Jessica win. If I confronted her too soon, she'd go on the defensive, twist the story, and possibly start preparing to take half of everything I had worked for. I knew the law well enough to understand that a messy divorce could ruin me financially. So, I decided to play the long game. The first thing I did was secure my assets. Over the next few days, I met with my lawyer, Michael, a no-nonsense guy who had seen enough divorce cases to know exactly how this could play out. I laid everything out for him: the affair, the messages, and my concern that Jessica would try to take half of my wealth in the divorce. Michael leaned back in his chair, nodding. "You're in a good position, Ryan, but you need to be careful. If she doesn't know you have proof, she'll play innocent in court. And if she finds out you're onto her too soon, she might start hiding assets of her own or manipulating the situation." I knew what I had to do. I had to gather as much evidence as possible before making my move. Over the next few weeks, I started documenting everything. I installed security cameras at home, kept track of her spending, and even hired a private investigator, just in case she covered her tracks. The results were even worse than I expected. Jessica and Eric weren't just sneaking around in hotel rooms. She had been funneling money into a hidden account. Thousands of dollars, money she claimed was for household expenses, had been going somewhere else. And then I found out the real kicker. She was preparing to divorce me first. One night, I checked her emails again. There was a message from a divorce lawyer she had contacted. She was gathering information on our assets, trying to figure out the best way to maximize what she could get. "I don't want this to be messy, but I need to make sure I come out of it secure," she had written. I stared at the screen, my blood boiling. She wasn't just cheating. She was trying to set herself up for a clean break while making sure I paid the price. That's when I knew. She thought she was in control. She thought she had the upper hand. But she had underestimated me. I spent the next few weeks acting as if nothing had changed. I played the role of the clueless husband perfectly. Still affectionate, still supportive, still too busy with work to notice anything. At the same time, I was building my case. I quietly started moving assets into protected accounts, ensuring that any shared finances were properly documented. My lawyer helped me secure the house under my name alone. Jessica had never contributed financially, and I had proof to back it up. Then, I started preparing for the final blow. With the help of my private investigator, I compiled a full report: dates, locations, receipts, photos. Everything. I even got copies of the emails between her and Eric. The evidence was airtight. But I wasn't done yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own betrayal. So I set the trap. One Friday evening, I told Jessica I had to work late. She barely looked up from her phone, already making plans with Eric, thinking I had no idea. I waited until she left the house, then followed her. She went straight to Eric's place. With my PI in position, we recorded everything. Her arriving, kissing him at the door, the way they laughed together like they didn't have a care in the world. Then I made my move. I sent her a message while she was still inside. "Hey, Jess, just got home early. Where are you?" No response. I waited 5 minutes, then sent another. "Hope everything's okay. I was thinking we could have a nice night in together." I could only imagine the panic setting in. 10 minutes later, she finally replied. "Sorry, babe. Just out with a friend. Be home soon." I almost laughed. The boldness of the lie, the ease with which she said it, it fueled my resolve. By the time she got home, I was waiting. But I didn't confront her. Not yet. I greeted her with a smile, kissed her on the cheek, and told her I had a surprise planned for the next night. "A surprise?" she asked, looking suspicious. "Yeah," I said. "Something special, just for us." She bought it. The next night, I took her to dinner, her favorite restaurant, no less. I wanted her to feel comfortable, to believe everything was still in her control. Halfway through the meal, I pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Go ahead. Open it," I said, keeping my voice calm. She hesitated, but did as I said. The moment she saw the photos, her and Eric together, the messages I had printed out, her face drained of color. "You've been lying to me for months, Jessica," I said, my voice steady. And I know everything. She stammered, flipping through the evidence, tried to come up with an excuse. But there was nothing she could say. And just so you know, I continued, leaning in, I've already spoken to my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready. You're not getting a single dime from me. Her eyes widened. Ryan, wait. I held up a hand. No, you made your choice. And now, you get to live with it. I stood up, leaving her sitting there, stunned and speechless. As I walked away, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks, peace. She thought she could betray me and walk away with half of everything. But in the end, she walked away with nothing. Jessica didn't come home that night. I didn't expect her to. After I walked out of the restaurant, I turned my phone off and went straight to my lawyer's office. The divorce papers were already prepared, but now it was time to serve them. Michael made sure everything was airtight. She wouldn't be able to take a penny from me. By the next morning, she was officially served. I wish I could have seen her face when she got the papers. Instead, I got a barrage of texts. Jessica, Ryan, we need to talk. Please. Jessica, you can't just throw away everything we built together. Jessica, I made a mistake, but we can fix this. Mistake? No, mistakes happen once. What she did was a choice. Over and over again. I didn't respond. By noon, my lawyer called. She's already contacted an attorney, but I don't think she has a leg to stand on. You protected your assets well, and with the proof we have, she'll be lucky if she walks away with her personal belongings. That was exactly what I wanted. Jessica tried to fight the divorce, but there was nothing she could do. She had no job, no real income of her own. She had lived off me for years, and now she had nothing to fall back on. Then, the worst part for her, at least, came next. Remember Eric? Her affair partner? Well, it turns out, he wasn't as committed to her as she thought. A week after she was served, I made sure Eric's wife, Lisa, got a full package of evidence. Photos, messages, dates. Everything. I didn't expect to thank you, but she called me anyway. Ryan, I had no idea. Her voice was shaking. Thank you for telling me. Eric's life unraveled overnight. Lisa kicked him out, filed for divorce, and for what I heard, she took him for everything. He lost half of his assets, custody of his kids, and his reputation was in shambles. And Jessica? Well, she thought she could run to him for comfort. But Eric, now facing his own disaster, wanted nothing to do with her. A few days after his wife left him, he sent Jessica a brutal text. Eric, I never wanted this to go this far. Don't contact me again. She was officially alone. Jessica started calling me, texting me, even showing up at my office. Ryan, please. I have nowhere to go. Not my problem. She begged. She cried. She even tried to convince me that we could work through this. I wasn't falling for it. Her last-ditch effort was a pathetic attempt at guilt-tripping me. You're just going to leave me with nothing? She asked when she showed up on my doorstep one night. After everything we've been through, I looked at her, truly looked at her, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger or pain. I felt nothing. Yes, I said simply, because that's exactly what you deserve. I shut the door in her face. That was the last time I saw Jessica in person. The divorce was finalized within a few months. She walked away with nothing but the clothes she had and whatever savings she hadn't already burned through. The house, mine. The cars, mine. The business assets, all mine. I later heard through mutual friends that she ended up moving in with a distant cousin, struggling to find a job since she had no real work experience. Eric? He tried to rebuild his life, but between the divorce and his reputation being ruined, he never fully recovered. And me? Well, I thrived. I moved on, found peace. And most importantly, I never let someone like Jessica fool me again. After the divorce was finalized, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, freedom. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't waking up to suspicion, to nagging doubts, to the weight of wondering if the woman I loved was deceiving me. Jessica was out of my life, and I planned to keep it that way. I took time off from work. Not because I needed to. I had been running the company like a well-oiled machine despite everything, but because I deserved it. For the first time in years, I booked a solo trip. I went to the mountains, spent days hiking through the wilderness, letting my mind clear. One night, sitting by a fire under the stars, I thought back to everything. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the anger. And I realized something. I had wasted too much energy being angry. Jessica wasn't worth that. When I returned, I started focusing on myself. I got back into the gym, something I had neglected during my marriage. I reconnected with old friends. And most importantly, I poured myself into my business like never before. And it paid off. Within a year, my company had grown exponentially. New contracts, bigger clients, I was thriving. Meanwhile, Jessica was struggling. She had tried to get alimony, but with our airtight prenup and the overwhelming evidence of her affair, she got nothing. She bounced from one job to another, unable to hold anything down for long. At one point, she even reached out again. Jessica, I know things ended badly, but I just wanted to say I miss you. Maybe we could talk. I didn't even bother responding. One evening, I was at a business networking event when I spotted someone familiar across the room. Lisa, Eric's ex-wife. We hadn't spoken since I sent her the evidence that destroyed her marriage. But when our eyes met, she smiled and walked over. Ryan, she said, holding out a glass of wine. I never got to properly thank you. We spent the evening catching up. She had rebuilt her life after divorcing Eric, started a business of her own, found peace. And as we talked, I realized something. We had both survived betrayal, and neither of us was looking back. Time has a way of healing wounds, but it also has a way of revealing who people truly are. In the months that followed, I watched from a distance as Jessica's life spiraled further. She had tried to date wealthy men, but her reputation preceded her. Word of her affair with Eric had spread, and in the circles she wanted to belong to, betrayal wasn't easily forgotten. She moved into a smaller apartment, then an even smaller one. Eventually, she had to take on multiple jobs just to keep up. One evening, while I was out at a restaurant with friends, I saw her sitting alone at the bar. She looked tired, worn down, a shadow of the woman she used to be. For a moment, I felt something almost like pity. Almost. Then I remembered the pain, the lies, the betrayal, and I turned away without a second thought. Jessica's final plea. Weeks later, I received a text from an unknown number. Jessica, Ryan, I know I don't deserve this, but could we talk? I don't know where else to turn. I stared at the message for a long time. Then, for the first time in a long time, I allowed myself to think about her. Not as the woman I loved, not as the person who betrayed me, just as a mistake. And I deleted the message. Some people don't deserve second chances. As for me, my company continued to thrive. My life was full, rich with experiences I never allowed myself to have during my marriage. Lisa and I stayed in touch. What started as casual meetings at networking events turned into late-night conversations, into shared stories of resilience, into something more. Neither of us rushed it. We had both been burned before. But for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't expected. Hope. Because in the end, I didn't just survive Jessica's betrayal. I won.